Right, good evening and thank you for joining us. This is Faye D'Souza. You're watching live with Faye. We've had several conversations over the last several months about the economy and how India would perhaps or possibly recover from what was going on through the lockdown and after. I just want to remind our viewers that we were having a tough time from the point of view of the economy even before the lockdown happened. Now, this is what has happened. The GDP numbers have come out, and India's GDP has shrunk by 7.5%. Now, this number is interesting for many, many reasons. Now, you remember the RBI estimated that in this quarter, the GDP number would shrink by 8.6%. It's actually only 7.5%. So the fall is a little less than even the RBI estimated. So a lot of people are very excited about the fact that this was a lower number. It does, of course, confirm that we are, in fact, in a recession. As you can see, that sharp drop that we saw attributed to the lockdown, and now this is the second one. So if you're seeing a drop for 2 consecutive quarters, you are in a recession. But there's some, of course, good news being picked up on the fact that it's not as bad as one assumed it would be. Now, if we take a look at the breakdown of why this turned out to be a little better than was expected, manufacturing has shown a sort of bounce back. In the breakup of numbers, we've actually seen manufacturing show us a slightly positive growth number. So agriculture, manufacturing, and utility, so electricity generation, electricity supply, that sort of thing, has shown a bounce back as well. Remember, agriculture was our only sort of saving grace in the last quarter, and it has remained strong in this quarter as well. Now, another question that's going to come up in our conversation with our experts is this. While manufacturing has shown us a bounce back inside the GDP number, the IIP number, which is the industrial production number, has actually shown a decline. So how can these two things possibly happen simultaneously? Now, there is a report that's come out by SBI research that has said that it's possible that manufacturing has increased its profits by cutting costs and firing people. And that is something that's going to hurt us in the coming quarters, because when you fire a great number of people, demand goes down because their families can no longer buy things. Also, something that's going to come up in our conversation, the fact that government spending is down in quarter two by 22%. This is the one thing that everyone was hoping for, that government spending would take us through this tough time. Government spending has actually come down. So these are the things that we're going to talk about to help us understand what's going on right now. Mr. Mohan Guruswamy, who's a senior economist, Professor Santosh Mehrotra, and Professor Aman Agarwal. Gentlemen, good evening, and thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have this conversation with all of you. Professor Mehrotra, if I may begin with you, at minus 7.5%, yes, it's a recession, but a lot of people are calling this a bounce back. Do you see this as a bounce back as well? Is this good news?
Well, I mean, a contraction is a contraction is a contraction. So I don't understand what good news is it? It is, point one. Point two, compared to peer economies, compared to other G20 countries, compared to the world, compared to other parts of the world, our contraction, even in the second quarter, compared to their second quarter contraction, is the worst. Only the UK is worse than ours. And someone is going to turn around, I'm sure, and tell us, like Soumyakanti Ghosh did the other day, oh, that we've done better than 49 countries. Thank you for showing that graph, because we call ourselves for the fifth largest economy in the world, the fastest growing large economy in the world. And so here also we should be comparing with other countries in this league. Yes. So why are we comparing ourselves to 49 other countries? So ideally we shouldn't even just go there. So the point is, we have to ask ourselves, why is our contraction the worst? So it's not as bad as we were hoping and expecting. Is no sort of consolation, no consolation to those who are losing jobs, those outside the organized sector, which have made actually very big profits, who are sort of hurting very badly, particularly the MSME, and the construction sector is still in contraction mode, and that's where most of the jobs are created. So I don't know what there is to rejoice about, honestly.
Okay, and I was going to bring up the fact that there has been, research that says that we're performing better than the rest of the country. That 49 other countries' average fall has been worse than ours. But Mr. Guruswamy, I'll take that to you. Do you also not see a silver lining in this? The fact that we've beaten RBI estimates. Does that mean that we've done better than even the RBI estimated that we would?
Well, certainly 7.5 is better than 23.9. Admitted. But we could have done better. You had a quarter in which you were dropping because you had a total lockdown, and it was expected. But then the government should have stepped in and done something. We need not have been 7.5. Even the United States dropped about 24% in that quarter and picked up to -4. But we didn't pick up because we didn't do anything. Governments just sat inertly and kept announcing schemes after schemes with no money in it. They just kept announcing schemes. But 5 years down the line, you will get this. But you got to put money. And what is the problem? The problem is that we have two economies. One is an advanced economy the size of, say, a good European country, Britain or something like that, in terms of people. And then we have almost 1 billion people below who got nothing. So, you tend to calculate these figures ignoring the rest. 110 million people jobless. Out of the 140 who lost their jobs, 110 are still without jobs. Construction hasn't picked up. All the other, job contract labor in the cities, in industries, MSMEs, all haven't picked up. So you've got automobile sector picking up because, whatever benefits you gave, you have given to the people in the upper levels of society. So they're doing well. So you can take one view saying that, we can keep giving these people more money and we'll have economic growth. Forget about the rest. The point is, I feel that people are there. So you're going to be looking at them. That is not happening in this country. And unless that happens, the economy will not pick up. You can have all these mirages.
Just one very quick point, if I may, Faye.
Yes.
The government is saying that we have put in place a 20 lakh crore package. And then the most recent, we are now being told we put in place a 29 lakh crore package, which means 15% of GDP. But the government's own estimates are saying the following, that in Q1, public administration, which is public expenditure, contracted by 10.3%, and in Q2, it contracted by 12.2%. In other words, it's saying that we are putting in all this money, and actually the actual expenditure is contracting. So there is a disjunction or a contradiction and an inconsistency between what the government is saying to us on the one hand and what it is actually doing.
Exactly what I was saying, that you have making announcements, outlays without putting in cash.
But let me bring in Aman Agarwal, because I know he'll have a different point of view. Professor Agarwal, how do you see this? You were talking about a bounce back when we talked last quarter. Is this the bounce back that you were expecting? And also, then how do we reconcile the fact that the IIP numbers are showing a contraction, but the GBA numbers are showing an increase? So basically, for our audience, the industrial production index is actually contracting, showing that we're producing less, but the companies that manufacture have actually done well over the quarter. The only possible explanation is that they haven't actually produced, they have cut jobs. How is that a good thing? Professor Aman Agarwal.
Yes, you have a couple of points there. For the first thing, when you're looking at these graphs, when we always said the 2 quarters negative meant recession, it meant in comparison to everybody on a glowing chart. And so when you had negative growth and everybody was having a positive growth, that's when you say these 2 quarters figure economically would mean recession. But when everybody is in recession in that phase, so actually equilibrium actually shifts down to make a more appropriate look of the figure what we are looking at. Secondly, it's important to note that if you look at the graph also, which you showed, where they had different countries comparison, the rebound back, the magnitude of rebound back is much larger than any other country. I'm not saying 49 countries or 50 countries we are doing better, but the question here is how much is the rebound back effectively taking place is much better given the size of the economy, which is almost 3 times that of the United States of America, and multiple times that of most other countries around the world. And the fact that we have to take care of the medical needs immediately, which is required because of COVID, as against other needs which are pertinent and important for an economic growth perspective. Now, when you talk of the manufacturing sector in specific, you see, if you look at the Q2 results, there's only 0.6% growth, as against 39.3% contraction which took place in Q1. So there is a rebound back. But where are we getting these manufacturing? When we see automobiles, they say we have sold 1 million cars today. They reported in the newspapers. Various other companies have reported. Many of them actually are clearing old stock. Please understand that the regulators had brought in certain regulations with the automobile sector itself, which restricted the life of a car to 10 and 15 years only, which is actually an asset which people buy for life. It is not an asset like a cup of tea or a coffee or a mobile phone these days. It is something like a mobile phone which was bought in the mid 90s when it was bought thinking that it will be for a long term, 10, 15 years. And similarly, is a car which people buy for lifelong. That ruling has come recently, which did disbar the 10 and 15-year structure, although they said that you need to revitalize your car life again every year. But then at least that ban was completely done away. And there was a huge chunk of pile of stock which most of the automobile companies had. And similar was the case that large number of manufacturing units had piled up stock in the past, which could not be sold because of the lockdown immediately. Some had gone hyper because of the COVID, the requirements of the COVID requirements, but many of them had got stuck up. And as a result, those stock clearances took place, and hence their profits were showing a positive sign as against what they were expecting. Certainly, the contraction in the employment figures is certainly, which you outlined, is there. The large number of units have actually contracted. But let me tell you, as far as my discussions are concerned, even as an institution, our own self, we have literally no revenue coming in with no students at all as of now. But the fact that we are even hiring, looking at the kind of growth components which are coming in. So it's important that feel-good factor, which is actually coming in people's mind again. And that's where this jump from 23 point some percent to about 7.5% clearly indicates that that sentiment factor is there, which will actually build upon in coming days future. So, I don't know if there's some third other point which was there, but these are 2 points which I could come out with, which you pointed out and you wanted me to respond on.
So, and I want to bring your attention, gentlemen, now to the question of government spending. Now, we've had several conversations again about what is the best way to sort of pull India out of this COVID-led, lockdown-led slump that we're seeing. And almost unanimously, everybody felt that the answer to that question is government spending. Now, correct me if I'm wrong in reading these numbers, that government spending, according to the GDP report that has come out, is actually down 22% in the second quarter. Professor Mehrotra, what could this possibly mean? How can a government in a pandemic possibly be spending less than it was last quarter and about the same as it was last year?
Good question. I think the answer is in your question. I'm baffled. I mean, it is mind-blowingly baffling, actually, that the fiscal package should have been the dominant part of your stimulus. What you got was barely, after Atmanirbhar Bharat 2 package announcement, the total fiscal package is 2% of GDP, which is just half of what we got in after the 2008 crisis, a fiscal package of 3.5% of GDP then. and still the government is not spending. I mean, what is one to say? I honestly, I'm short of words to explain it, honestly, because I don't see what explanation can there be. Because for the first quarter, one could have said, oh, okay, everything was in lockdown, so you weren't spending. Well, then in this quarter, that was not the case. And you would have expected, and I've been saying this over and over again, that had you decided on a fiscal stimulus package 5-6 months ago, it would have taken 3 or 4 months for it to actually begin to roll out. Point one. Point two, and listen to Sanjeev Sanyal. I've done that twice in the last 10 days. The principal economic advisor, he will tell you, oh, how can you put an accelerator while you've got one foot on the brake? For God's sake, he's in government. He ought to know that it takes 3 months for money to roll out. And the tragedy is that all of us have been making the case that there is a need for borrowing more. If you're worried about the fiscal deficit, you have no choice, because you will have to borrow more later down the road. There's no getting away from it, because when the economy continues to stagnate, including next year, you will have no choice left to borrow. But then you will borrow more. So why are you not borrowing now? If you had put money into the hands of people, then people would have begun to spend. There's a collapse in demand. I think we are seeing that private consumption expenditure is collapsing. Your data is showing so in Q2. And that's sort of nearly 60% of total GDP. And you didn't put in money into the people's hands. You could have put money into the people's hands through cash transfers, but you didn't. And because you didn't, we now have a deeper contraction than we could have seen. The tragedy is that firms are dying as we speak, that capacity utilization is dropping. Do you know what capacity utilization is running at? It's below 60%, never in our history. You know what plant load factor in our electricity plants is? Plant load factor means what is your installed capacity in electricity plants and how much are they actually producing. It's 56%, never in our history, 56%. Why? Because there is no demand. You may try and put as much money into the hands of banks and expect them to lend. Well, the credit is not flowing.
Well, unfortunately, this is where we are. Mr. Guruswamy, there have been a lot of questions, and questions are now popping up on the chat window as well, asking us about the banking sector, real estate, MSMEs, pharma, all of these sectors getting hurt. If we pick up from what Professor Mehrotra told us, that there's no money actually circulating in the market. People aren't using the capacity. So to break it down for our viewers, when someone puts up a factory, there's money that is borrowed and funds that are raised to buy that machinery and put up a factory. But if you're only using 60% of it, which is what Professor Mehrotra was saying is utilization of capacity, you're not making use of the money that you have invested, which means you still have to pay back those loans. Is this going to lead to a larger crisis, Mr. Guruswamy? Or do you feel that this quarter's numbers could maybe save us from that crisis a little bit?
There is a virtuous cycle. You got to put money into people's hands, create jobs, then they'll spend, and then the cycle begins. You can't say, I'll put up a factory when there's nobody there to buy. These are activities. You must therefore move the economy, saying that, look, money is coming into the system, and therefore there'll be demand for these goods. I'll set up a factory. That's how the cycle runs. You didn't put that money. All you did was announce schemes and said that somewhere along the line you'll get all this. And you giving a tax write-off is not pump priming. All it meant was that some corporates made more money and more money went out. Okay?
I want to add something to that. Go ahead, but finish, Mohan. I want to add to what you're saying.
Cycle go, you just can't beat the laws of economics. You can't say, that, the auto sector is growing, factory production is growing, when, as Dr. Agarwal says, there's unsold stock. That doesn't come into this production figure this year at all. That's why you've got a mismatch between auto sales and production figures. Now, I think first step is that government, Mehrotra has been charitable to them. He says 2% of GDP. Actually, I've done the numbers. The amount of money they have pumped into the economy is 1.8 lakh crores, period.
1%.
That's less than 1%, in my estimation. And I said that you got to pump in 15% additional, which is what Japan, United States, Britain, everybody has done. And you are saying, I've got, as you know, Britain has spent 20% of GDP and they got minus 8%. You have spent 1% or 2% and you say I've got minus 7.5, so I'm better than Britain. Which is utter nonsense. There are countries which have grown. China has grown. There are 20 other countries who've got plus GDP, who've recovered fast. You just don't want to recover.
Right.
You sit there, dreaming of things which never were.
Is there a risk of a banking crisis, Mr. Guruswamy?
Of course, there's a risk of a banking crisis. But, we have always ways of muddling through. We still have about 15 lakh crores with the RBI as reserves. And that money is not untouchable money. Though, the media has made it as untouchable money. There are reserves sitting abroad. Why are you piling up reserves abroad? Why have you got $550 billion sitting abroad? I keep asking people, well-known economists like Kaushik Basu have been saying, you can actually run this down, bring some of the money back, put it into the economy. And nobody is paying. The people who are benefiting are asking for more. Government employees have got their DA. Government employees are getting their full wages. They're getting the leave travel. Now they've got a Diwali bonus to go and buy goods. Who's suffering in this country? Are you looking at real people? This is where you should be looking differently, in a different direction. Even today, I'm talking about the farmers' agitation. These are the best off farmers in India, where Punjab gets 60% of the total MSP procurement. 90% of their production is procured at 600 rupees per quintal above the market price. The people of India haven't spoken as yet. When the people in the highlands of Deccan, Madhya Pradesh, Orissa and hinterlands of the country who are really poor will speak out, then you're in trouble.
Mm.
And it will start peaking now. You can't keep people down forever. Because all the migrant workers have come back to their villages. The villages of Madhya Pradesh today, I spoke to somebody near Betul. He says people have come back in the villages. Normally you will only see old people and women in those villages. Because the rest have all become migrant workers. They're all back sitting there doing nothing. Same thing with Bihar. Young people are sitting in the villages. You have to address that problem. There's a human problem.
I want to now just turn the conversation and obviously and unfortunately this is where we are to all three of you and Professor Agarwal. And I want to point this out to our audience that Professor Agarwal's voice has always been, let me say, pro-government voice or a voice that believed in what the government was doing. So he's an important person to consult with at this point. This is where we are, and I could spend time actually showing you evidence of it, but we all know this to be true. Malnourishment numbers in our country have gotten much worse in this country, which means that we anyway had the largest number of hungry children. It's gotten worse in the last 1 year during the lockdown for two reasons. One, parents cannot afford to feed their children, and two, they have not been getting their midday meals. So we're running the risk of losing an entire generation to diseases that we eliminated 20, 30 years ago by feeding children. One. Two, businesses are shutting down across the country. You don't need paper evidence for this. If you were to drive around any city that you live in, you will see the number of empty spaces that used to be showrooms, used to be offices, that now say to let, space available for rent, call this number. They're all empty. Fast food restaurants that we knew in our neighborhood are now gone. So these are all jobs that are gone.
Pakoda walas
Now-
have gone.
Yes. And now job loss. The fact that businesses are continuing to lay off people. Now the lockdown came and went, but the impact continues. People are still losing jobs. People are still receiving pay cuts. Freelancers, businesses are not getting business. They're not getting work. And so they're sort of entrepreneurs who shut their businesses after 3-4 years are a sort of a nouveau unemployed now because they've invested a lot of money into businesses that no longer exist. The question is the government hoping this will all go away magically? Do you see any of the work that's being done right now from inside the finance ministry? Is this work that will actually change this? Because so much time has gone, we've reached the end of the year. We haven't really seen any real response from the government. Professor Agarwal, do you believe that any of the things that have been announced so far will do the trick?
You see, first of all, Faye, if there is no hope, we don't see that light at the end of the tunnel. And it's a very important component that people at the grassroots level are able to see that, but not educated people. And it is important to be said this way because there are countries like United States of America, as rightly pointed out, had given a huge chunk of money where the Federal Reserve Board had come out and said that this is going to be a big chaotic problem, which the then president had done. And it's going to create a big economic ripple and problems. As far as fiscal deficit is concerned, certainly I have raised this point at your forum and other forums also that the government needs to consider and not be tied down to the fiscal deficit figures they have tied themselves on in the current scenario, given that we have large amount of accumulated reserves. But these reserves have gone up, as rightly pointed out by RBI also, from 500 billion to about 550 billion, and an additional about 35 to 40 billion as loans to neighboring countries. We're sitting on a pile of about 580 billion, which has gone up by almost $50 billion. Now that money has come at a time when the world is in a downpour, when there are no investments going in. And this is not repatriation of NRI funds or NRI funds coming to India. Now, some of them may be reinvestment by companies here, which are based here. Some of them may be fresh funds, which may be coming in. That means those organizations which are actually looking at this are seeing some kind of a positive note to what the government of India is doing. In fact, a couple of investment bankers from Canada and US who were interviewed in various economic times.
No, Professor Agarwal, forgive me for it. I don't understand what you're saying. Would you explain it again to me, please? Are you saying that the government is doing enough or no, the government is not doing enough?
Again, no government can do ever enough. They will always try. Secondly, the COVID is round the corner and hopefully 2 vaccines which are showing positive, both the serum and the one which came out today, where one of the doctors had tested the 3rd round, starting the 3rd round today, which is a completely indigenous vaccine. If we are able to get that up within the cost frame, which both institutions are talking about, we are not only going to have a huge chunk of spending by the government in terms of taking that medicine to the people at large, because that will be largely given free of cost in various states, as they have also committed in some of the electoral frameworks in the recent elections. But apart from that, this will also serve as an export commodity, like we saw the hydrochloroquine getting service and being shipped to the rest of the world. So
What is
that's
the
going
volume
to be
of sales?
sorry.
What volume of sales? How much hydrochloroquine did we export? Do you have any numbers?
Maybe you can give me the numbers there.
You're quoting it up. You're quoting it.
Okay. No. So this is
Cost of vaccines be.
Let me complete.
Cost of vaccines. If you give 1 billion people shots, it will be 2,700 crores. That's what Aadhar has estimated. What is the huge sum there? You got a GDP of 220 lakh crores.
I think, Dr. Guruswamy, it seems you've forgotten that the displaying of these medicines is not only the cost of the medicine itself, but the medical practitioners and the other paraphernalia which is required to give these doses to the people in 2 stages. I think you seem to have forgotten that
What
cost,
is
which
the
is
boost to
also
the
a cost.
economy?
No.
What is the boost to the economy? We're talking about economics here. We're not talking about public health.
Okay. So one second. Let me just bring in a tiebreaker. I believe the argument is Mr. Guruswamy is arguing that how are we able, to, as a country, going to afford that cost? Professor Agarwal is arguing that
No. I'm not
because
saying afford that cost. I'm saying the cost is very little. It is not going to do anything to the economy.
Okay, so let me just share one more thing with you that just came out in the Indian Express. I was reading it, I just discovered it as well. This is the Indian Express's updates on COVID. It says quite proudly that the health minister has said that the government never spoke of vaccinating the entire country.
Right.
It will only vaccinate those people who will be chain breakers and not everybody. This is not an exercise that's going to include everybody. Of course, there are details to that. We'll bring you the details to that. Does that in any way change what you were saying, Professor Agarwal? If you're saying that now this is going to be an even smaller exercise than what you expected?
No, I also did not say that they are actually going to vaccinate the whole country.
Okay.
I said that they are going to be vaccinating those specific people who are below the poverty line, which others have mentioned here. And then there is a paraphernalia of industries which are actually shot up. Large number of MSMEs have shut down. Similarly, large number of MSMEs have been set up during this COVID time to actually factor the needs. Please understand, various countries have seen supply chain breaks. Here we have seen breaks, but not to that great extent that the foods could not be delivered to people's homes, whether in big cities or small cities and towns. Okay, I agree with the fact that there are people who are still sitting at home not doing. Why? There is a fear. That fear has to be taken off, and that's where this vaccine will help take off that fear from people's mind to come back and start working more rigorously.
Professor, I agree. So you were saying basically the vaccine will come, the government will distribute the vaccine, it will take us out of this environment of fear, people will be able to go back to work. My question to you was a little different. People are less afraid of the virus than they are of not being able to put food on the table and not being able to pay school fees. People have lost jobs, and we're talking about white collar jobs here that are much more difficult to come by. There are no jobs in the market to go out and get another job. So people are not at home out of fear of a virus. They're at home because they have no work. How is that going to be remedied? And I don't see the government really honestly doing anything about it.
You see, after a long time, large number of companies have started showing profitability. That profitability, including even sales, which I had an interaction with senior people there, where they had negative growth. In fact, they were financing large part of their salaries from loans as well, because they were not having revenue because of construction going down. Now, this is where the difference will come in once the revenues or profitability which are seeping in, is where people will go back to wanting to do business, expand their businesses, hire people again. It's not that the hiring has stopped. The hiring is still going on. Large number of companies are still hiring. It may not be at the same level as it used to be in the past, but it is going back. Please don't think that it's going to be a one-day affair. It's going to take at least about a quarter for that effect to actually step in and go forward. And secondly, people who have moved to the rural areas, they're not going to come back to the urban areas back again. So there are going to be job reallocations. There may be setups of industry which will end up being there. Hello.
Reports suggest that most of them have already come back to the urban areas, but let me allow my other two guests.
No, this is only numbers. It's not the same people. It's numbers. You see, what happens is people who have gone back, there are different lot of people who are coming into the motion. Not everybody is coming back into the same sphere.
Okay, Mr. Guruswamy.
The CMI has said that in the last two quarters, we've lost 18 million salaried jobs. Salaried jobs. They're not daily wage jobs.
Exactly.
And where is this job growth you're talking about? There is no
God.
There is job.
Exactly.
There's all hope. Tomorrow there'll be job growth. Of course there'll be job.
Exactly.
We can't be in this hole forever. But how long will we be in this hole? There is light at the end of the tunnel. But how long is the tunnel? That is the question.
Dr. Guruswamy, you think giving a few 100,000 rupees will bring in that light in the tunnel?
No, few hundred.
And that why has this job scenario been such a bad thing going on in this country for last 70 years when distribution of funds used to take place in the past? I'm sorry to put this forward that If you think cash distribution at people's hand can bring in
No
those
cash
jobs,
distribution.
that will make them
Cash
even
will
more
work.
lazy or not
What
wanting
is
to
the
work
work
and
you
move
have
forward.
created?
No, one second. One second. Professor Agarwal, I've heard this argument, and this is personally something that I feel very strongly about. So I'm just going to say it before I bring in Professor Agarwal. You did say if we put cash in the hands of people, they will become lazy and not want to work. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I can tell you
I'll
about
give you my example.
I can tell you about professor colleagues
I
of
just have one
mine
question.
who have
I have one
started
question
working
with it.
from home and do not even want to go back to the institutions to work.
Okay. Let me just put
Because
one
they've
thing
got
forward to
used to a
you.
particular kind of a facility. And that's
Okay,
a normal
Mr.
feature
Agarwal,
which
Mr.
happens
Agarwal,
in
one
most.
second. You have to listen. Okay, when
Yes.
I first moved to this city, to the city of Mumbai, 16 years ago, my first salary was 6,000 rupees a month. I learned to live on 6,000 rupees. I mean, my salary now is zero because I'm an entrepreneur, but my last salary was not 6,000 rupees a month. I made enough money over the years to be comfortable, but it was never enough for me because I always wanted more. I always pushed myself to work harder. I didn't take a break. I wanted to be able to afford nice things for my parents. I wanted to be able to afford nice things for myself. I wanted the next best thing. I think it is fundamentally bigoted towards the poor to assume that if you give them 5,000 rupees, they're going to drop their hands and say, this is enough for me. I never have to work again. I don't care if my kids don't go to a better school. I don't care if my kids don't have like nice clothes to wear and good shoes. I'm just going to stop. 5,000, I'm done. This is good. I think that India is a fundamentally ambitious country. Speak to your driver, speak to your watchman.
Correct.
All they want is to send their kids to a better school. All they want is to be able to buy nice shoes for their kids. All they want is to be able to improve their quality of life for their children, to not have to do the job that they are doing. I think it is unfair and very cruel to assume that the poor lacks.
Let me just respond briefly. Most labor class works during the day and end up throwing that money off, spending that money off, and not going into the development of many of their families. And that's a lot of people. They live by the day at that level. It is not that most of them now they are, because the money, most of them are ending up going into the accounts, but otherwise, most of them were working during the day, spending it and not building upon it.
No. Mr.
You are welcome to do a survey and find it out yourself.
If that were true, chit funds would have never ever found a foothold in our country. What is a chit fund? A maid who makes like a few hundred rupees a day will put 50 rupees aside at the end of the week because she wants it to grow to something. A service that the banking sector did not offer her. I think that you are generalizing and that is not 500.
Fair. So they sacrifice their current consumption for that particular 500 which they expected to get. And that's why Sahara is behind the bars. Otherwise, Sahara would not be behind the bars.
No, one second. I think
let us be clear. The chit funds in this country have had major frauds.
To let you take this point because I think it's unfair. I consider myself poor when I started. I was not making enough to be able to eat at the end of the month. To say that someone who is poor because they're lazy or unambitious is fundamentally
You are
bigoted.
putting wrong words. I said if they get access to free funds for a long time, and the government, no government in this world can give it also. Gives it because it's not coming to your and my pocket. It's going to go to that poorest person. For how many months can the government give? Do you have numbers? Dr. Guruswamy has numbers as to what amount can be given.
All right, let him answer.
How many months?
Professor Mehrotra wants to come in. Professor Mehrotra, come in.
With the 550 billion reserves, even if we liquidate to zero, how many months can we service them, sir?
You don't understand what I'm saying. You're seeing grassroots green shoots, all kinds of things you're putting in my mouth. I'm saying make investments. I'm not saying give money. You make investments. You understand that investments create jobs. Jobs create consumption. Consumption creates demand. Understand that.
I agree with you.
I'm not saying give away. And I don't believe this nonsense that people who earn money drink it away. That's utter nonsense. This is middle class sentiments, superciliousness that people drink away. How much of money is spent on drink? How many people drink in this country? How much of alcohol is drunk?
You have revenue when the lockdown was opened up. That we saw how much the lockdown was opened up. Immediately, how much was sold immediately.
If we consider...
Again, you did not talk about investment. And I have never
I
said that the
spoke about-
fiscal spending
I
must not
said
be done. You
put
talk
money-
about
No,
cash
gentlemen,
transfer, direct cash
okay,
transfer.
let me
Again, my
just-
question, sir, both of you do with data.
I
Please
spoke
tell me
about
how many
you have to give-
months can a country service with $550
Okay,
billion
all right,
as reserve
gentlemen, you
to
have
the
to
poorest
stop.
people in
It's
this
not
world?
that kind of
If you
joke.
give-
Okay,
if you
Mr. Agarwal, Mr.
give
Gulswami, just 1 second, 1 second.
below
Let me
poverty
bring in-
line people,
Let-
it amounts only to
Okay, sorry, I'm sorry. And I'll come back to you because right now the audience can't understand what's happening. Let me go to the tiebreaker here, who's Professor Mehrotra. The question that Professor Agarwal asked, which is a straightforward question, let me rephrase it. For how many months can the government continue to do a cash transfer? If the cash transfer is what we're looking at as a solution, can it do it for 3 months, 6 months, 8 months? How many months? Professor Mehrotra.
It can do it ad nauseum till the end of time. Let me explain. If Professor Agarwal has the patience, maybe he wants to go to the ICRIER website and read a paper of mine. It's a full-length paper, and the government of India itself was considering a cash transfer as an option in Atmanirbhar Bharat 3 and did not do it. Why it did not do it, I don't know. But let me answer the question. What do you think the PM Kisan is? It is a government commitment to give
I
to.
would request if you can give a single
May I
number
finish?
answer,
No,
sir.
I didn't
Let him
disrupt
finish,
you.
let him finish,
I
let him
did not disrupt you. So please hear me out.
Please don't shout.
I would appreciate, sir, if you don't force me to shout. Thank you very much. Because we've heard you for 20 minutes rave and rant without any basis or logic. So please, enough is enough. The PM Kisan costs only 60,000 crores per annum. My answer is that you give the same amount to a much larger group of people and it would cost only 10,000 crores. I don't have the time to explain this to you. Read the paper. I spent time thinking about this. There are several other economists, sir, who have worked on this. It would cost nowhere close to what Nyay would have cost because it would be a much less transfer. It would be a transfer equivalent to PM Kisan, but it would be given to 60% of the poorest people. And if that had been started 4 months ago, we might have begun to see a revival of demand from the poorest people. But I'm not getting distracted by this. Can we go back to the substantive issue, honestly, that in a sense Mohan was raising, and Faye, you had raised, about how it is that we've got manufacturing reviving in Q2. Well, what has happened, and I think you understood that quite well, is the following, that unlike what Professor Agarwal thinks, the fact of the matter is that in this quarter, organized listed companies actually made a profit which is unprecedented in their own history. Now, let me give you a bit of a background of this. The unfortunate situation is that in the last 6 years, profits and corporate savings as a proportion of GDP have actually systematically increased from about 9% of GDP in 2013. They rose by 2.5 percentage points to 11.5% of GDP. In other words, profits were growing, and yet investments were not growing because the economy was slowing. The government, the private major investors were not willing to invest. They were holding back their funds and they were taking it abroad. I can give you the amount of the proof of what money was being taken abroad. Let's come back to this second quarter. How come they made the highest profits in 25 years? One, you rightly said, they cut jobs, regular jobs. So they cut costs. Second, they cut wages of those who had jobs in their companies. Third, they were holding stocks of raw materials from the preceding period. And in this quarter, those got utilized in output. And while costs were being cut, it's not that they were cutting prices. So they made a killing. Their profitability rose very, very sharply, which is a serious problem, because what this means is that if all the data is correct, a significant part of this money is going out because it's not going into investment, because that's what the data is showing, that investment is shrinking and is likely to continue to shrink. That is the reality. And if we are very, very, very happy about foreign exchange reserves rising, can we just remind ourselves why suddenly foreign exchange reserves have risen? One reason is that imports have collapsed while exports are not doing too badly. So we have a trade balance which is in surplus, point one. Point two, across the globe, interest rates have collapsed because the economies of the world, especially the rich economies, are trying to stimulate their economies, quite unlike what we are doing. The result is, because their rates were lower in any case, and they have fallen further, so money is flowing into India in the last few months. Foreign portfolio investments have been flowing it at very significant rates. The result is that our foreign exchange reserves are rising as a result. And the result is also that as a result of this inflow of capital, of dollars, the exchange rate continues to remain strong, which is not a good thing for our exports, which is not a good thing for our manufacturing. So this rising foreign reserves is not a good thing in a developing country, not a consistently good thing in a developing country. We need to increase investments, and that is not what we are seeing. So all this, blah, blah about, this and that is not very helpful. Ki koi wapas aa raha hai, ki nahi aa raha hai, etc. Let's look at the macroeconomic fundamentals of the economy, which are being destroyed. And the fact of the matter is that no one is saying that we will return to GDP levels of 1920 before 22-23. And after that, because capacity is being destroyed right now, and because banks' NPAs are continuing to rise and will rise from here onwards to about 14 to 15%. I've heard Yashwant Sinha's son, whatever his name is, who's obviously still a minister and knowledgeable, say himself that our NPAs are going to go to 14 to 15% of advances. Can you imagine what the impact of that is going to be on credit as we move forward? Our banking system will be under such severe strain that they will not be able to lend. And if they are not able to lend moving forward after 3 years as well, what will happen is that your investment rate will not grow. If your investment rate does not grow, you are not returning to anywhere close to 7 or 8% growth rate for another 5 years after 23. Everyone is now estimating, anyone in their right mind is now estimating that the expected growth rate of India, the potential growth rate of India is no more than 5% per annum. We are already been in the last decade, been growing much more slowly than the East Asian neighbors. In other words, our gap, the gap between our per capita income and East Asian, the gap between our per capita income and China's income has been increasing. There has been a divergence, and the way things are being managed in the last 6 months, we do not expect that we will be able to begin to resume the reduction in poverty that was happening until 2013.
Right. I want to bring in Mr. Guruswamy because I'm sorry I cut you both off to diffuse that conversation. We know that in order to meet the government's estimation of how India will grow by the end of the year, we'll have to do 15% for the next 2 quarters, which is everybody accepts right now, which would be impossible. Also, going back to the cash transfer, because we did not resolve that conversation, I give both of you a chance to respond to it. Abhijit Banerjee, who won the Nobel Prize for Economics last year, said very clearly in May, along with many, many other economists, that India should immediately begin transferring 1,000 rupees per person into the hands of the poor. The argument here, if I'm not mistaken, is that these people will go out and buy things with this money. When they buy things with this money, the money will circulate in the economy. It will generate demand. The demand will generate jobs. And of course, it will generate tax collection because a portion of that buying is obviously GST, which goes back to the government. This was not done. Do you want to respond to the questions that were asked by Aman Agarwal, Professor Agarwal, that for how long can the government possibly do it, and how is this a possible solution?
You know,
Do you want me to do it? Or do you want Mohan to do it? It's either way, it doesn't matter.
Mr. Guruswamy, because he was in the middle of that conversation when I cut him out. So I just want to give him a chance to finish. Yes.
that this scheme, if you give it to the below poverty line people, will mean 4 crore families, and this will cost you 56,000 crores a year. It is not a sum which is impossible. It's not, we can shave this money from elsewhere and bring it in here. Now, in this entire Corona period, we didn't cut any salaries from government employees.
Yes.
We didn't cut any DA. We gave them the leave travel benefit. And you're talking about 23 million people in that sector who account for 11.4% of GDP. You didn't touch it. Why should only the poor people in this country pay the price? So, you have to give poor people something. They have a right in this country. They have a right to live. If there are no jobs, you want to put food on the table. Give jobs. Don't give money. Create public works. What did the US do in the Great Depression? That's the great lesson there. Create public works. Say, I'm going to build roads. I'm going to build canals. And then you say, I have no capital for that. I say, bring down some of this, cut some salaries, get that savings, get some of the reserves back, monetize it and put it in. There's no shortage of money here. It's just an attitude. They will drink away the money. If you give them jobs, they'll do something else. There are women and children in every home. Women also go and work in this country. So you got to think rationally on this, not work off your prejudices saying these people are all like that, the lower castes are like that, it's not going to work. So, I think this scheme, DBT, is doable. This government is still thinking about it. It's this kind of spurious debate that anything given is bad, that you got to make people sweat for it, and got to make people make a profit and then enjoy that profit. Doesn't work. Modern economics, everywhere in the world, they're saying now, even a country like Finland, which has maybe 50 times our per capita income, is giving DBTs. So why should we hesitate? Britain is giving, America is giving. America gave money. It's a perfect capitalist country. China gives money. Everybody gives money. Here we give money to people who already have it. 1% of the population has taken 73% of the growth in the last 1 year. There's something wrong with this system.
Yeah. In fact, even in countries like France, employees were given across the board, were given bonuses saying, spend this money. Here's a bonus on the condition that you spend this money in the market over Christmas, over various vacations that they have. It's basically a way to distribute funds in the way that you look after your people and you get it back in the market. Professor Aman Agarwal, I'll give you a chance to rebut. If you don't believe, and we'll leave the cash transfer at Mr. Guruswamy's word, if you don't believe the cash transfer is the solution. And I want to point out that while the point you made on vaccines is a good point, the work the government is doing on vaccines is health. I'm talking about economics. What is the solution economically? Because are we just going to wait for this to play out on its own? Or do you believe there should be an intervention from the government? What should that intervention be?
First of all, Faye, you pointed out the Nobel Prize statement which was there. That was done in May. And secondly, please understand at that time we were still in lockdown. So even if money is there in your house, in your hand, and you cannot move out of your house, so you can't go about spending. Unlike us who are able to spend and buy through various apps online, many of the poor which we're talking about do not have those facilities sitting in the villages, far-fetched villages. Secondly, the Moody's has come out with a report which was a couple of days back, if I remember, which clearly outlined that we are expected to grow at a rate of about 8.6% as against 8.1% in the global macroeconomic outlook for 2021-22. I wonder if they are just hoaxing these figures. They are fairly a creditable, data crunching organization. Thirdly, I have not disputed the fact of investment. I think that is something which I've been impounding on, that the public spending in terms of investment, trying to churn jobs, giving them jobs, is something which I would certainly inculcate and will be happy to see, even if the government has to spend out of the pocket and reduce those foreign exchange reserves. And I've been speaking this not now, but for the last 3 years in specific at various channels, that the government does not need to bog down by fiscal deficit numbers of 3% or 4% or 5%. We have the buffer to go about doing that, but by making it through an investment vehicle, but not by cash transfers. The cash transfer scheme is the UBI, the Universal Basic Income Facility, which the government has been wanting to talk about. Even last year, there was a lot of discussion about it, but that is there when you withdraw all other schemes which are prevailing. There are over 25,000 plus schemes under which cash benefits are given to various populations in this country. Now, unless you withdraw them, that's where the UBI talks about. So DBT, some part is already given in these schemes also. I don't know how much disbursements have taken place, but some part is already given. I am not disputing that there is no relevance of it. When you talk of cases like Finland and France, please understand, United States, Finland and France have a consolidated personal tax income itself varying between 65% to about 80% of what they charge as taxes from the people at large. Almost all facilities are granted by the government free of cost, transportation, whether it is medical facilities, school, colleges, large part of it because they charge taxation between 65% to 80%. This government, when we got independence, had a similar structure, which was reduced to 10, 20, 30% slabs, which is one of the lowest slabs in the world. You can't have both ways. You don't give taxes and then you expect that those benefits are going to come to you. France, let me complete again. Let me just take one more second. France did not impose those kind of lockdowns as we did. So when they gave those buffers, people were still in the markets to go about spending. We had no occasion where there were restrictions in terms of when they opened up for one day, you could see the kind of hue and cry which was there before liquor shops, and that created a COVID scare before the government as to what should they do and what should they not do. When they just opened up the economy and they were trying to open up and see. Please, let's understand one small thing. The government is trying to do its bit. They may be slow. If the government is not being able to reach the people, they would not be being given a mandate time again and again. In the United States, despite the government giving those buffers, the government has been taken track of completely. So it is not the cash transfer only which makes the benefit again here. Please understand, it goes both ways. It has to be seen that is it making an impact. And as far as large number of chief economists of banks and financial institutions, as far as India rating is concerned for them, given the strong position the government of India has taken in the last couple of months, specifically in terms of fiscal status, they have not, and as a result, they have still kept the investment factor high for India. These are chief economists. They're again not just anyone who just started crunching numbers.
Okay, I have to actually rebut you myself on certain things that you did say. You did say that the 1,000 rupees that Abhijit Banerjee recommended which I quoted, that the government transfer 1,000 rupees into the accounts of people and give it to them in their hands in the lockdown. You said they'd never be able to spend because there was a lockdown. Let me point out to you, if a family of 4, 2 adults, 2 children, were to buy vegetable, milk, ration, soap, water, electricity bills, sanitary pads, pay their phone bills, that would be well more than 1,000 rupees, all of which can be done online. Nothing you have to go to the market to do. If that's the argument, and you're saying that people couldn't buy these things in the lockdown, then effectively people would have starved and died, which is another criticism on the lockdown. I'm just giving you that as 1 second. I'm not done. You also said France did not do a lockdown as hard as ours. I want to remind you that France had a lockdown, which in Paris noted that people could not move more than 200 meters from their homes without a signed declaration of why they were outside their homes. So I think that's an unfair comparison. You also said the government is doing its bit, but it is a little slow. Otherwise, why would they constantly get mandates? I don't know what mandate you are referring to. If you're referring to Bihar, they only got half that mandate. And I think it's unfair to examine economic policy and say because they won an election, obviously they got it right. If that were true, then demonetization would have been a right move. And I don't think any economist right now would confirm, including yourself, that demonetization was the right decision. It was a wrong decision from every angle. They still won elections after that. The two things have absolutely nothing to do with each other. If the government is doing its bit and it's a bit slow, is this the environment in which the government should be a bit slow? The worst sort of health crisis we have seen in the world in modern history, the worst humanitarian crisis we have seen in this country in modern history, the worst GDP numbers we have seen in this country in the history of independent India. Is this the time to do your bit, but to do it a bit slow? Shouldn't the government be behaving like this is an emergency? Shouldn't there be a war room for economics where they're constantly trying to figure out solutions, where they're having conversations like this, shooting down ideas, coming up with new ideas, testing new ideas? They're not doing anything. My only problem, and I'm not the economist, is that the government doesn't seem like there is any sense of urgency on the economic front. And that really worries me because we seem to be on a clock. Anyone who wants to respond, we're out of time, but if there's any one of our guests who wants to respond to that, please let me know.
Faye, just one point again. You see, you're talking of small villages.
One second, Professor Malhotra, you're 1 second. Professor Malhotra, you're mute. You have to take yourself off mute.
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm just going to make a very brief intervention on
yes,
cash transfer. I felt that Abhijit Banerjee's suggestion of 1,000 rupees per person was overly generous, and I don't know how long he would have continued it, but my own proposal at that time for the period that we were in lockdown for about a 5 or 6 month period was for about 2,500 per family. And that would be tapered down to 500 rupees per family after that, to be given to 60% of the country's poorest people. That's 70% of rural and 40% of urban. And there are ways of actually identifying these, which I have worked out in that ICRIER paper that I was talking about. And interestingly, the cost, the question was asked, oh, how long will the government keep spending money like this? And khairat baant rahi hai, kaise khairat baantegi sarkar, vagera, vagera. The cost of the 500 rupees per household to 60% of the households of the country would be barely 0.6% of GDP. It's barely higher than, it's actually much less than what the government is going to be spending this year on Manrega. It amounts to only about 70,000 crores per annum. Imagine if that had been put in place early on, and we have the systems to do it. And it would have substituted for the 60,000 crores of PM Kisan, because PM Kisan is only helping the best off in the rural areas. They are the owner cultivators. PM Kisan doesn't give any money to tenant farmers. PM Kisan doesn't give anything to the landless labor. My proposal which is still sitting with the Niti Aayog. And of course, it was debated whether we should go for it or not. But the government doesn't want to spend money at all. It would have cost merely, if you would substitute my proposal for PM Kisan, and you would be spending only 10,000 crores per annum more. How much more affordable can you be? So ये जो खैरात बांट रही है, ये जो भ्रम लोगों के दिमाग में फैलाया जाता है कि अरे खैरात बांटोगे तो लोग काम करना बंद कर देंगे, वो दारू पी जाएंगे, वो तो अपनी पत्नी को और मारेंगे, वगैरह वगैरह। दिक्कत ये है कि जब गरीब आदमी की नौकरी चली जाती है और वो काम नहीं कर पा रहा है, तो उसको तुम 500 रुपए दे दोगे तो अपने बच्चे के लिए संभवतः दूध ला पाएगा। वो शायद
औरतों के अकाउंट में ट्रांसफर कर दीजिए ना।
औरतों के अकाउंट में, आप बिल्कुल ठीक कह रही हैं, औरतों के अकाउंट में ट्रांसफर करने का ही सिस्टम मैं बता रहा हूं। तो ये इसी नासमझी की बातें तो लोग बहुत कर लेते हैं, कर सकते हैं, करते रहेंगे, कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता। पॉइंट ये है कि जरूरत आज ये है कि सरकार खर्च करे, मगर सरकार अपनी जेब दबाए बैठी है।
Right. So we have run out of time. But okay, all right, Mr. Guruswamy.
दबाई बैठी है, कहते हैं कि हमारे पास पैसा नहीं है, कहां से लाए? हम ये बता रहे हैं कि पैसा कहां से लाए,
ये भी बता रहे हैं।
तनख्वाह काटो, लीव ट्रैवल बेनिफिट काटो, बाहर जो पैसा पड़ा हुआ है जो बिना विदाउट अर्निंग एन इंटरेस्ट, उसको थोड़ा वापस लाओ, इन्वेस्ट करो। बैंक्स में जो बड़े कॉर्पोरेशंस के 17 लाख करोड़ रुपए बैंक्स में पड़े हुए हैं, उसको 30% सेक्वेस्टर करके स्कीम्स में लाओ। मनी इज देयर, you need will and you need concern and you need a heart and a head.
More that than the heart. You need both.
You need both. There is money. I've written a long paper on where the money is.
Yes.
You can use that money, but you don't want to do it. And
Yeah,
what
exactly.
have you done? You've given bonuses to government employees to go and buy more. Sitaraman says, this is pump priming the economy, go and buy some goods. This is India's privileged class living in a gated community. उनको कहेंगे और पैसा देंगे आपको? There's something wrong with the value system of these people. That is my problem.
Okay. Aman Agarwal, last word.
All is responsible.
Thank you, Faye. You see, I appreciate that 5-month period which has been pointed out in this paper, and I certainly go through that paper in any case. But let me tell you one small thing. Even if you're giving 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 rupees, where you don't get a network in big cities like Delhi, NCR, how will you expect to get that network in small towns and villages? And when you restrict that you can't even go to a bank to take money out, and when there was complete lockdown in the first 2-3 months, even if you transfer that money into their account, and that was being done. Sorry?
Jandan Aadhaar mobile. Jam.
Correct. Let me complete, Faye. Can I? Yeah. So when the money is transferred into the account, and that's what it rightly said in females' accounts, that's what they were transferring the money to in most cases when DBT was done in the first stage. A lot of people were not able to use that money also, whatever little money was transferred in the first stage. And the reason was that they were not allowed to go to the banks. Many of them did not even know how to use it in these small villages. And that's where, even if you put that money in that place, it's not going to give you that rebounding factor which Ring talked about. Okay, so again, as I said, reinvesting, investing, creating facilities, creating work, creating projects is something I'm all in for. Fiscal deficit spending, yes, I'm certainly in for. But if you're talking about just transferring, and as rightly said by Dr. Malhotra also, 5 months is what he's projected. Again, put in a timeline. How much? Even let me say 5,000. Why 1,000? 5,000 can be given per family. But for how long? Can that be estimated? Can an economy which is already not having revenues at that stage, when even the GST collection, everything else going down, can they project how long can they give it? And
How
I really
long-
like
Okay.
a study.
All
All right,
for one of them.
understood. I'm
Coming on
going
how
to
long
leave
can
it
you
here.
spend?
Okay, I'm going to leave it here. I just have one rebuttal to offer you. That the Jandan Aadhaar mobile, jam program that the government of India, this
Correct.
government, the Narendra Modi government has been championing now for the last 6-7 years, was designed specifically for the proper purpose of putting money in your account that you can access with your mobile phone. Also, I
Correct.
want to clarify, banks functioned every single working day during the lockdown. They were an essential service. You were
Correct.
allowed to go to the bank if you had to go to the bank. If
Correct.
you weren't allowed to go to the bank, that is a failure of the lockdown. It means the lockdown was being implemented wrongly. You were never supposed to be stopped when going to the
Correct.
bank, when going to the market, when buying food, when buying medicines. So I don't think that that's accurate. People
Correct.
were allowed to go to banks. Banks were functioning. But I want to just take the point that Aman Agarwal argues that investing in this market or if the government spending is the most important way. The other two guests argue, yes, government spending is important, but it's also important to make sure that there's money in the hands of people. For whatever it is, I'm not picking which of these is the best option. I'm just saying, do something, do anything, show some sense of urgency, which we have not seen from the government. And that is what concerns me. Because as someone who has run a business in the past, if I felt that we were in a problematic position, I would get together the best people. We would lock ourselves in a room and we would come up with a solution. And that's how everybody does it in all businesses. You just buckle down until you come up with a solution. I don't see the buckling down. We don't see the war room the government has put together. We don't see them calling in great experts for suggestions. And we don't see them picking those suggestions. Those are the problems right now. In the meantime, children starve, business closing, people losing jobs, frustration building in homes, poverty numbers will increase. And that's a process. It's going to take us much longer to reverse. It's not going to be something that we can just say, okay, now everything's over, let's go back. None of us are going to get our jobs back if that's the case. It's going to take much longer to reverse, and that will be a bigger problem. All right, I'm going to leave it here, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on a very animated discussion on the economy. Doesn't normally happen, but I personally really enjoy talking about the economy. Thank you to our audience, people who've been supporting us today. Rachna Chitwani, Harish, Reshma Nair, Sridhar Raghuraman, Ankit, JSS, Sharat, Dips, and Misha Malhotra. Thank you for supporting us financially. We use this money to pay salaries and to fund the journalism that we're doing. Hopefully, we continue to do this for you through the years to come. Thank you for watching. Good night.